Finn McCool, the Giant of Knockmany Hill, by Tomi DePaola. In olden times, when Ireland's glens and woods were still filled with fairies and leprechauns, giants, too, lived on that fair emerald isle. One of the finest of these big folk was Finn McCool, who was married to the great lass Unag. They made their home on the top of Knockmany Hill. Now, as any good giant, Finn McCool had his work to do, so he was often away from home. But lovely Unag didn't seem to mind, for there was plenty to keep her own hands busy, spinning, knitting, and even giving a pretty touch to their great home. Life was very pleasant indeed. One morning when Finn McCool was busy working with his kin building a causeway to Scotland, the word came that Cuchulainn was coming. Cuchulainn was a giant too, and without a doubt the strongest in that part of the world. When he walked, the very earth trembled, and with one blow of his fist he flattened a thunderbolt so it looked like a pancake. He was so proud of that feat that he kept the thunderbolt in his pocket to show all just how strong he was. Every giant in Ireland had been given a good beating by Cuchulainn. Every giant, that is, except Finn McCool. And Cuchulainn swore by the green that he would never rest, day or night, winter or summer, until Finn McCool was added to his list. So far, Finn had been smart enough. He kept moving about whenever he heard that Cuchulainn was in the neighborhood. But this time Cuchulainn was sure to get him. So Finn left the causeway and sped off for Knockmany Hall, his house, and his darling Unag. "Finn, my love," said Unag, greeting him at the door, "what brings you home so early from your work?" "The chance to get a sight of you, my sweet thing," said Finn. Since he was as honest as the summer day is long, he added, "and to keep out of the way of Cuchulainn. He's after me." Unag soothed her husband. She brought him slippers and lit a pipe for him. She stirred up the peat fire so it would be cozy, and then she set down a huge mug of stout and cut a gigantic slab of soda bread for her dearie. "Finn, husband of mine, enough is enough," said Unag as gently as she could. "For years you've been hiking around from one place to another to avoid this Cuchulainn. Why, you even built our house high on this windiest of hills, so you'd be able to spy him coming. You'll not get a moment's rest until you stand fast and face him." "Aye, and I'll be getting plenty of rest if I stand fast and he knocks me down. I don't have the heart to face a man who can make a young earth quake just with his walk, and who carries around a flattened thunderbolt in his pocket just to prove his strength." At that, Knockmany Hall gave a little dance. "He's coming," said Finn, his face turning a fine shade of pale green. "Now hush," said Unag, "and give me time to think. Do you worry that I won't do all that I can to help you settle this matter once and for all?" Unag then worked a charm the fairies had taught her. She took 9 woolen threads, each a different color, and braided them into 3 braids, and she put one around her right arm, one circling her heart, and the third around her right ankle. Now nothing she did could fail. Next, she sent around to all the neighbors to borrow 1 and 20 iron frying pans, and she hid them 1 and 20 loaves of bread that she had baked on the fire in the usual way. And she set them in the cupboard with some bread she had baked the day before. And then she took a pot of milk and made it into fresh, wet cheese and put it along with some white stones at the foot of the cradle she had made up. "Now, my darling," she said, handing Finn some baby clothes, "put these on and do everything just as I'm about to tell you. And remember," she said at last, "Cuchulain's strength lies in his brass finger he has on his right hand. Now, quick into the cradle, because I hear that man mounting at the door." "All right, woman," bellowed the giant at the door. "Where's that coward Finn McColl that I've been chasing after all this time?" "Well, well," said Onog with her sweetest smile. "Now, isn't it a shame? Finn was off working on the causeway when some important family affair called him away. But he'll be home by tea time. So why don't you just come right in and sit down?" And poor Finn trembled in the cradle. "See this?" Cuchulain said, pulling out what looked like a pancake out of his pocket. "This was a thunderbolt until I caught it and flattened it. And that's what I'm going to do to Finn McColl, too." "Tis, tis," said Onog. "That might not be as easy as you think. Finn McColl's a big broth of a man. Why, look at our little baby, and you might get an idea of the strength and breadth of Finn himself." Cuchulain peeked in the cradle. "Cheer up," said the big baby, looking back at him. "My," said Cuchulain, "what a big boy." "While you're waiting, why not have a bite to eat?" said Onog, and she put some loaves of bread on the table, along with a can or two of butter and a pile of cabbages. Cuchulain, who was as much a glutton as he was a bully, popped a loaf in his mouth and took a huge bite right down on one of the frying pans. Clang! "Yow!" shouted Cuchulain. "What kind of devil's bread is this? Here are two of my teeth out." "Oh, that's Finn's bread. The only kind he eats," said Onog. "Is it a bit too tough for you?" "Too tough for me," shouted Cuchulain. "I should say not. Give me another." Cuchulain chomped into another loaf and into another frying pan. "I'll not have a tooth left in my mouth, woman. There's two more out." Cuchulain hollered even louder. The baby began to holler too. "Hungry, hungry, hungry." "Ah, sweet dumpling," said Onog, and she handed baby Finn a loaf. And because there was no frying pan in it, Finn ate it right down. "More," said the baby, and he gobbled up another loaf. "He seems a strong lad," said Cuchulain, getting a little worried. If this was the baby, the father must indeed be a bit stronger than Cuchulain thought. "Ah, yes," said Onog, beaming. "Why, instead of dollies, he loves to play with those white stones here and there in his cradle. Show the nice man, baby dear." Finn did as he was told. He picked up a stone, which was really the cheese, and squeezed all the water out of it and popped it into his mouth and ate it down. Well, Cuchulain was not to be outdone by a baby. He grabbed a stone and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed as he might. He couldn't get one drop of water out of it. He popped it into his mouth, and with a chomp, there went the rest of his teeth. The howl that came out of him almost broke all the windows, and when he finally calmed down, Cuchulain said to Onog, "What kind of teeth does that lad have? They must be made of iron. Let me see your chompers, baby." At that, baby Finn opened wide his mouth, and Cuchulain stuck in his brass finger, the very brass finger that was the secret of his strength. And with a strong bite, Finn McColl bit the brass finger right off. Then up Finn leaped and began to pound the living daylights out of poor, weak Cuchulain. And that was that. Out of the door went Cuchulain, never to bother anyone, let alone Finn McColl again. "Tea's ready, my love," said Unag, and Finn McColl sat down with the best giant wife in the whole world, and they lived a long, happy life. The end.